Okay, everyone, my name is Luis Calero, and today I'm going to talk about behaviorism, one of the most influential learning theories in education. Behaviorism explains that learning is a change in observable behavior. According to this theory, students learn when they respond to stimuli from the environment, and their responses are strengthened through reinforcement. Instead of focusing on truths or emotions, behaviorism focuses on what learners do and how teachers can shape those behaviors. First, let's look at the foundations of behaviorism. From an epistemological perspective, knowledge is acquired through observation and experience. From a psychological perspective, behaviorists believe that only observable behavior should be studied because the mind cannot be directly measured. The sociological perspective uh, emphasizes that the environment and social context influence behavior. And finally, the historical foundation shows that behaviorism emerged in the early 20th century as a reaction against introspection. Some of the most important theorists are Ivan Pavlov, who developed classical conditioning, John B. Watson, who is considered the founder of behaviorism, Edward Thorndike, who proposed the law of effects, and B.F. Skinner, who developed operant conditioning. And now, uh, I'm going to talk about the how does learning occur. According to behaviorism, learning follows a simple sequence. First, there is a stimulus, then the learner gives a response, and finally, there is a consequence. If the consequence is positive, such as praise or a reward, the behavior is more likely to happen again. If the consequence is negative, the behavior becomes less frequent. And now let's see which factors influence learning. The most important factor is reinforcement, either positive or negative. Other factors include punishment, extinction, generalization, discrimination, motivation, and learning environment. Together, these elements determine whether a behavior is strengthened or weakened. The next point is the role of memory. Behaviorism considers memory as the retention of stimulus-response connections. Repetition and frequent reinforcement help students remember what they have learned for a longer period of time. Another important concept is transfer of learning. Transfer happens when students apply a learned response to a new but similar situation. For example, if students learn a grammar rule in class, they should be able to use the same rule in different activities or real life situations. Behaviorism is especially effective for explaining habit formation, step-by-step procedures, motor skills, basic academic skills, and both classical and operant conditioning. It's particularly useful when um, students need repeat practice to master a specific skill. Now let's discuss the basic principles for instructional design. Behaviorism suggests that learning should be observable and measurable. Teachers should divide learning into small steps, provide frequent practice, reinforce correct response immediately, and evaluate the students based on measurable performance. These principles make learning more structured and objective. The next section explains how instruction should be structured. A lesson based on behaviors begins with clear and measurable objectives. Then the teacher presents the content, models the expected behavior, provides good practice, reinforces correct response, gives immediate feedback, and finally evaluates whether students achieve the learning objective. This sequence helps students learn gradually and effectively. In conclusion, behaviorism remains an important learning theory because it emphasizes clear objectives, practice reinforcement, measurable results. Although modern education combines different theories, many classroom strategies used today are still based on behaviorist principles. And thank you for your attention.
Hello everyone, today I'm going to talk about cognitivism. Cognitivism is a learning theory that explains learning as a mental process. Instead of focusing only on a student's behavior, it focuses on what happens inside the mind when people learn. It studies how we think, remember, solve problems, and process information. First, let's look at the foundations of cognitivism. From the epistemological perspective, knowledge is actively built by the learner through mental processes. From the psychological perspective, cognitivism studies attention, perception, memory, language, and problem solving. The sociological foundation tells us that learning is also influenced by social interaction, culture, and environment. Finally, the historical foundation explains that cognitivism appeared in the mid-20th century as a response to behaviorism. Now, let's talk about some important theorists. Jean Piaget explained the stage of cognitive development. Jerome Brunner introduced discovered learning and scaffolding. David Ausubel emphasized meaningful learning and advanced organizers. Robert Gagne created the conditions of learning and the 9 events of instruction. And George Miller studies information processing and process that short-term memory can hold about 7 pieces of information. Next, how does learning occur? According to cognitivism, learning happens when students actively process information. They encode it, organize it, store it in memory, and later retrieve it when they need it. There are also several factors that influence learning, such as prior knowledge, motivation, attention, cognitive development, and the learning environment. Memory is very important because it allows us to store information in long-term memory and use it later to solve problems or perform tasks. Another important concept is transfer of learning, which means applying knowledge or skills learned in one situation to a new context. Cognitivism is especially effective for developing problem solving, concept learning, information processing, verbal learning, and decision-making skills. This theory also assumes that learners are active participants, that learning depends on previous knowledge, and that information should be organized in a meaningful way. Finally, instruction should activate prior knowledge, present information clearly, provide practice and feedback, and encourage students to reflect on their own learning. The lesson plan based on Gagne models follows 9 steps, beginning with gaining students' attention and ending with helping them transfer what they learn to new situations. In conclusion, cognitivism helps teachers understand how students learn by focusing on mental processes and meaningful learning. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Today I'm going to explore one of the most important frameworks in education. A constructivism, as we look at this comprehensive concept map, we will see how this theory shifts the focus from the teacher simply giving information to the student, actually building their own understanding. Let's start with the top left section. Foundation and K theories. Under foundation and K theories, we see that constructivism isn't just one idea, it brings together several perspectives. First is the epistemological foundation from Piaget. He argued that knowledge is subjective and must be actively constructed by the student, not passively received. Then we have the psychological aspect from Burner, who focus on learning by discovering meaning. The mind constantly adapts when it faces new information. Vygotsky gives us the sociological foundation, social constructivism. He taught us that meaning is negotiated through language, cultural, and social interaction with others. Finally, Dewey provides the historical context with experimental learning, a theory that emerged as direct reaction against the rigid rules of behavioralism. Now let's look below that at the mechanism of learning. How does this actually happen in the brain? Learning occurs through active connection. Students must connect new information to their prior knowledge. This process is influenced by their past experience, cultural context, and social environment. Notice the role of memory here. Memory isn't just a flying cabinet, it is active and reconstructive. Every new experience modifies our mental schemas or structure. The ultimate goal here is transfer, which happens when students can apply learned patterns to real authentic situations because of this constructivism is the best suited for advancing knowledge acquisition, complex problem solving, and critical thinking. Moving on the top right, what does this mean for us when we are creating our lesson plans? Under instructional design, the relevance is clear. Our focus must be student-centered. The role of the teacher change entirely. We are no longer the sage of the stage, lecturing for yeah. On and on, we become the guide of the site, facilitating the learning process. A huge part of this is scaffolding or endomage. This means we provide temporary support to help students reach a goal, and we slowly we drop the support as they gain competence. All of this must happen in a theoretical context using tasks that replicate real-world complexity rather than abstract isolated drills. Finally, let's look at the bottom right at some practical example of this action. Example one is a science lesson on ecosystem. Instead of reading a textbook, the taxi is to building a functional terrarium in groups. Students research materials with the ecosystem and observe condensation and plant growth. The constructivist element here is the physical construction, making errors and debating findings with peers. Example two is a history lesson on the Industrial Revolution. The taxi simulated 1815s. Some hand meeting students taking specific roles, like a factory owner, a chill worker, or a policeman. They research their character worldview and debate chill our hope meaning is great through multiple perspective and social synthesis. In summary, constructions demands that we create rich interactive environments where students are the builders or their own knowledge. Thank you.
I am going to talk about connectivism. Connectivism is a learning theory for digital age. It's explained that learning happens through connection between peoples, information, technology, and networks. The main theoreticians are George Simon and Steve Downes. They explain that knowledge is not only inside the mind, it can also be found in websites, videos, databases, and digital tools, and another people. Learning occurs when students connect with different sources of information, such as online videos, articles, classmates, teachers, and digital platforms. Some factors that influence learning are access to technology, digital skills, motivation, collaboration, and the ability to choose reliable information. In connectivism, memory is not only in the brain, it can also be stored in devices, notes, websites, and online networks. Transfer happens when students use knowledge from one connect in other situations. For example, they can watch a video at home, discuss in class, and create a project. Connectivism is useful for online learning, collaborative learning, digital literacy, lifelong learning, and field classroom. For instructional designs, teachers should help students search, connect, evaluate, and create and share information using technology. Instruction can be structured in 3 months. Before class, students explore videos or digital resources. During class, they discuss, collaborate, and solve problems. And after class, they create a product or reflect on what's learned. For example, in a flipped classroom, a lesson about mass media manipulations, students can watch a video before class, discuss examples of fake news bias during class, and create a digital poster after class. Another example is a lesson about environmental problems. Students watch a video after class, share real examples during class, and create an infographic with a possible solution after class. To conclude, connectivism is important because it teaches us that learning is not only memorizing information. Learning is a knowing how to connect with people, technology, and reliable resources. As the final idea said, knowledge grown through connection. Thank you.
Hello everyone, for my part of the presentation, I'll be breaking down the 3-4 section of our concept map regarding Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. And if you look at the blue box on the left, you will see all the first topic, definition and approach. As future educators, we are often to go to a standard lesson and then figure out how to modify it for the students. We are struggling. UDL completely flips that approach. UDL is a proactive educational framework. It assumes right from the beginning that learner diversity is the standard, not the exception. The approach here is about building flexibility in the curriculum from day one, minimizing barriers so that all students have an equal opportunities of success. Now let's move down to the purple box and mechanisms of learning. How does learning actually happen within this framework? Our map highlights 3 key components at the bottom. First, let's look at memory under OUDL. And constructivist approach, memories isn't just a passive recording device where students memorize facts for a test. It is highly active and reconstructive. Every time a student encounters new information, they are actively modifying their exciting mental schemas. And next we have transfer. This is the ultimate goal in the classroom. Transfer occurs when students can take a learning pattern or concept and successfully apply it to brand new situations and authentic tasks. UDL supports is by giving students multiple ways to engage with the material, which helps them see the underlying patterns rather than just isolate facts. Finally, what is the approach best suited for? Because UDL encourages students to actively construct knowledge and apply it to new contexts. It is absolutely ideal for advanced knowledge acquisition. It is the best framework for teaching complex problem solving and critical thinking. We aren't just teaching students what to learn, but how to learn it. And with that understanding of the definition and learning mechanisms, I will now pass it over to my partner to explain 3 core principles of UDR. Thank you.
Now I am going to explain 3 important parts of universal design for learning. First, UDL has 3 core principles. The first one is engagement, which is the why of learning. It's mean motivating students and helping them feel interested in class. The second one is representation, which is the what of learning. It's mean representing information in different ways, for example, with text, images, videos, audios, or explanations. The third one is action and expressions, which is the how of learning. It means allowing the students to show what's they're learned in different ways, such as speaking, writing, drawing, representing, or creating a project. We have UEL in action and lesson plan. This means that UDL should be included when the teacher plans the class. The teacher should think about different activities, materials, and options so all the students can participate. For example, some students can learn better by watching videos, other by reading, another by doing a practical activities. And finally, we have practical examples. A teacher can use images, videos, group work, discussions, games, project, or digital tools. For example, in a science class, students can build a terrarium, observe it, discuss the results, and then present their conclusion. In this way, students do not only memorize information, they learn by particularizing and applied knowledge. In conclusion, UDL helps students learn in different ways, participate actively, and show their knowledge according to their abilities. Thank you.
Now, I am going to talk about differentiated instruction. Differentiated instruction is a teaching approach that adapts lessons to meet a students' different needs, interests, and learning abilities. Its main goal is to give every student the opportunity to learn successfully because not all students learn in the same way or at the same pace. There are many strategies teachers can use to differentiate instruction. For example, they can create flexible groups, prepare tight assignments with different levels of difficulty, offer choice boards, organize learning centers, provide scaffolding. Use different learning resources, include the students' interest in activities, and applying ongoing assessment to monitor progress. These strategies help teachers make learning more personalized and effective. Differentiated instruction also has many benefits. It addresses students' individual needs, increases motivation and engagement, improves academic achievement, builds confidence and independence, and creates a more inclusive and supportive classroom for everyone. Finally, let's see what experts say. Carol and Tomlinson, one of the leading experts in differentiated instruction, explained that differentiation is not about giving teachers more work. Instead, it is about planning smart so that every learner has the opportunity to success. Now, my classmate will continue explaining how differentiated instruction can be implemented in the classroom and provide some practical examples. Thank you.
How do we implement differential instruction? To implement differential instruction, teachers should first identify their students' learning needs and interests. Then they can adapt the content activities or assessments according to those needs. It's also important to use flexible grouping, provide different learning resources, and continuously monitor students' progress to make adjustments when necessary. Next, let's look at some examples of differential instruction. Some examples include offering different reading materials based on students' reading levels, allowing students to choose how they present their work, using visual aids, videos, or hands-on activities, and organizing students into flexible groups for collaborative learning. These strategies help every student participate according to their abilities. Finally, why is differential instruction important in a lesson plan? Differential instruction makes lessons plans more inclusive and student-centered. It allows teachers to address different learning styles, interests, and readiness levels, ensuring that all students have meaningful opportunities to achieve their learning objectives. To conclude, as the infographic says, differentiated instruction promotes equal access, individual growth, and collective success. In other words, when teachers adapt the instruction to meet the students' needs, everyone has a better opportunity to learn and succeed. Thank you for your attention.